Hi everyone, just want to give you a heads up that on this episode we have a few scenes before the main title, so the podcast will start at the top of the show. Hello everyone, we're here with the Outlander podcast. I'm Tony Graffia, writer, executive producer of Outlander, and I'm here with the lovely Meryl Davis.
Hello, thank you for inviting me again. We're diving right in because we don't even have our main titles to start with this time.
Now this is one of the, I think, only 2 episodes this season where we start with an actual scene before the main titles. And this is sort of a flashback.
Yeah,
it's not a flashback, but we're jumping back in time to see
and
that.
we actually debated whether or not we needed this scene initially, quite honestly, because we weren't sure we wanted to flashback and see what happened on the ship specifically, and we weren't sure if we were going to see the Bakra on the ship or the Campbells or...
This is what happened in episode 308. At the end of 308, when young Ian is taken. And we did debate having the Bakra on the ship and revealing her, but we decided to save the reveal for later in the show. But we thought that would be a dramatic opening to just show something from young Ian's point of view.
Also, I think from just a creative perspective, we also talk so much about not having seen young Ian for a long time and
Right.
feeling like we needed to touch base with him and see where he'd been. And
Yeah, this gives us a sense of what happened to him since he was kidnapped on the island, and Jamie and Claire have been searching for him, but we just wanted to go back to see a little bit of what he's been through and ramp up the urgency of why it's so important to find him, because he's really in some danger here.
And this cave set or underground cave set is something we built on one of our stages. It was kind of a difficult set to find because originally we thought of this space as more of a underground kind of basement type pit.
Pit. We called it the pit.
That Bakra would have, but we realized that would have been very hard to find and shoot in, so we had to create something on our stage and talk about and build stairs up to the main house to imagine that it was kind of on the lower floor.
Right.
We
John Bell,
love him.
all of his scenes we've seen so far, when he was singing, and we've seen him laughing and singing, being funny and cute, and here he gets a real dramatic turn in this episode and does such a nice job. He has such range for a young actor.
The Bakra was a name that you guys came up with the writer's room, but I wasn't there, so I don't remember the origins of that.
Yeah, we were trying to think of a name for Galis that would hide her identity so that you'd hear all this talk of Bakra, Bakra. And we looked it up, and I believe we found out that it meant the boss,
Nice.
Female boss, in one of the languages that would fit our location. I'm not even sure which one, but
This set, Galis's house, Rose Hall, is also something that we built on set, and the exterior house is a house we found in Cape Town. It's been there for several hundred years, actually, and it's been around forever, and is owned by a family that's been in that country for
cool.
many generations.
Now I love this. It's so crazy. This is our reveal of Galis Duncan, who's known as Mrs. Abernathy, of course. And here, we originally had a scene that came before this where
Campbell's.
the pirates bring her the box and she opens it and is angry and flings the box to the side because the sapphire is missing. But when we saw this bloodbath scene, which was Matt Roberts' idea, he had read something about how goat's blood can keep you young looking, and we were, as everyone knows, we've had challenges aging our cast because they're all so stunningly beautiful, and it's hard to make them look older. And he thought, well, let's sort of explain this by saying that she's done this bath in blood that keeps her young.
Oh,
And it was such a great scene that we cut the earlier scene so that we could, or actually we cut part of it and moved it to later.
we actually have Lotta here wearing some prosthetics actually on her face, but she is so young looking. It is a little hard to read on camera, but down around her cheeks and by her nose to try to add a little bit of aging. But also, John and Lotta met for the first time, obviously, in Cape Town and had never met previously and had the best time together. So I think you can really tell in these scenes that they have the start of a great friendship here off camera, which really kind of adds to their scene work.
Right.
I mean, I think Lotta had so much fun with these scenes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he does a convincing job of looking terrified because, as you would be with her, and yet he's feisty. He's like his Uncle Jamie, and he's feisty, and he talks back to her, so it made these scenes very, very interesting.
Now, we also had a big debate in the room about why Galus would sleep with young Ian, and this whole idea about needing to sleep with young virgins, which we actually kind of ended up not really pursuing just because we couldn't figure out how that worked in the end. It was a little convoluted. We talked to Diana a little bit about it as well.
Right.
We also talked about the fact that young Ian probably has never had tea before.
Yeah. Although he has had a woman. So yeah.
But that's one of the reasons also we decided to have young Ian have a little dalliance.
That's right.
In a previous
307,
episode,
in 307.
because we decided that one of the reasons she might keep him around is because he had some experience and there was something to be gained from him. Sorry, you hear my drink probably clinking. We also tried to figure out a way to lighten Lotta's hair here because obviously Lotta's natural redhead. And we had made conversations originally. We wanted her to be all white and have a completely white hairdo, which we thought would look really cool. But in our research that our hair and makeup department did regarding redheads as they kind of get older and start to fade,
Right.
kind of like Jamie Fraser, it actually just gets a little lighter as opposed to gray first, as her hair would have done.
Right.
This was also difficult. Do we want to talk at all in this section about the prophecy or how we kind of came up with that
Yeah.
and why we veered from the book a little bit?
Yeah, we changed it slightly from the book. I believe in the book they're looking for the last of the Lovett line, and it was a little complex. It was interesting and fascinating, but a little hard and dense to understand. In the book, they had many more pages to explain it. We had to, explain it in TV time, which was a little quicker, and it was a little unclear, like exactly what Galus would have planned to do had she found Brianna, the last of the Lovett line, and what she actually had to do to make the prophecy come true of the new king rising. And we wanted to add a little more danger and tension to it and say that, she was out to kill Brianna. So we changed the prophecy slightly. We came up with this thing about the blue sapphires and how if it's kind of a two-part prophecy where if a seer can hold all three sapphires from the crown of the first king of Scotland, that she'll be able to foresee when the new king would rise, which is when a baby that is 200 years old has been killed. And that's what Galus's frustration is where's there a 200-year-old baby, which is, of course, Brianna. And it took a lot of work in the writer's room. We discussed this a lot.
Well, also, I mean, just also discussing why the treasure was left there, who left it, which we also changed
Right.
slightly because it is, and once again, we did confer with Diana as well because I think no matter how many times kind of we went over all of this stuff, it was still quite tricky to figure out how that played out in the TV series.
Right. I love how she's like, oh, well, I can't use you for what I thought I wanted
Exactly.
you for, but while I have you here, oh, God.
And actually,
so scary.
a nice little nod when she says, "Good, you'll know what to do then." A nice little nod to Jamie and Claire's wedding night.
Right.
At least one of us will know what they're doing. I believe that's
Right.
what Jamie says. Um,
All right, so I wanted to bring up that we are drinking today. As you guys know, there's a line of Outlander wines that are out, and we had a batch of them here. The consensus at the office between the writers and the support staff after we'd tried them was the favorite was McDo, which is a French Syrah, and named for Jamie, of course. And we're drinking this in honor of that Jamie is bringing his cargo is French wine that he is bringing to the governor.
and I'm bucking tradition, sadly, or bucking our thing here and actually having gin and tonic because I prefer that over wine, but much to Tony's disappointment.
Ah, you rebel. Actually, I think we went through a couple different versions of this script that when Luke first wrote it, I believe that the Ian story was paced out during the episode, that we cut to Ian, intercut the Ian story that we just saw before the main titles in with the current story that was happening presently. But it was a little too confusing because the Ian story was taking place as mainly a flashback in a different time, and we ended up re-editing it towards the end to just play them all up front. And that was Ron's idea. Thought it was too confusing after he'd seen the director's cut, and our fantastic editors Mikey
And Melissa.
Melissa re-edited it to move all the Ian scenes up front, and now we come into the Jamie Claire story.
We also had a little tricky time trying to figure out if they go straight to the governor's ball, how would they change? Where would they get their stuff? I mean, all of these things you don't really think about before you're starting.
Yeah.
Trying to tell a story and then the logistics sometimes get in the way.
Right. We call it shoe leather in the writer's room, in all writers' rooms actually. That's the term writers use is shoe leather, and we're always kind of like, there's a shoe leather scene. We have to explain how they got to this place, or how they changed their clothes, or how did these people catch up with those people when they were, it's all the logistical stuff. It's pain in the butt, but
Yeah, sometimes
it has
it's
to be
our
done.
least favorite thing to do, but
It is, but you don't notice it when it's well done, but when it's not
Exactly.
well done, boy, you notice it. And so when you're watching sometimes a normal show on TV, you find yourself scratching your head going, hey, wait a minute, how'd they get over there? Or they were just wearing other clothes, and it takes you out of the story. It's a big problem. So it's something that is done sort of in a under the radar kind of way to make the story flow smoothly.
yeah, but also the best writing I think is certainly the type where you're getting all that information without even realizing you are.
Right. That's right.
We had long conversations in Cape Town about women with parasols and who would have a parasol and who wouldn't,
yeah.
and who would be in the town and what would they be eating, and we actually where they're walking right now is also something that is built on our amazing Cape Town studios in the back lot.
Yeah.
This was also a little bit of a tricky episode in that obviously it dealt with slavery and something, that we were all uncomfortable with and was a sensitive topic. And we had a lot of discussions about obviously needing to show slavery as it was,
Right.
but not anything gratuitous, and trying to show it in the most honest and
That's
sadly
right.
horrifying way as possible.
Yeah, it was hard to show some of these scenes. We definitely had many, many discussions because we wanted to do this justice and not, so much of it we just hated to show, but we decided, obviously as a group, the more we talked about it, that if we watered it down and tried to make it, you know, somehow seem less, you know, disturbing, that it would be an injustice because, you need to see how brutal it is. And I remember talking about it in the room, but like this shot right here of the people in these cages, I remember that when I first saw this in dailies, it just made me gasp, because even though we've all seen images of that in books and on other shows, just talking about it and then seeing it are two different things, and seeing those images really was just so upsetting. And
Well, even also knowing they're actors, it doesn't help. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's still.
yeah, you hate to
Yeah.
even ask actors to do this, to portray it. I'm sure it's not, great for them. But I think it's important, because when you do see it, you can't help but just hit you in the gut how wrong it is.
But this was another area that, in the back half, I think we did streamline a bit. And this was another area of the book that we kept the Temeraire storyline slightly adjusted.
Yeah.
But there was an Ishmael storyline that sadly we weren't able to do as well during this part. But just had to streamline in the back half because there was a lot of stuff. And
Yeah, and of course, Claire being from the future is, the most bothered by this, because this is not something that she saw in her lifetime. And
But also, I think what we talk about in the room a lot is it's very hard to separate our contemporary viewpoint on things when you're doing a period piece, because it's natural that you want everyone to have a horrified viewpoint of slavery and other injustices. But you talk about the fact that sadly, not everyone felt that way back in this time. Claire would be one of the few people that would feel this was wrong. And it's
Yeah.
hard to do that, but you are trying to maintain a historical reality to those times, and not bring your own personal feelings always to the table in terms
right.
of wanting other people to show sympathy.
Well, this is from the book.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
This is from the book, and we did talk a lot about, how do we show it? How much do we show? But definitely show that Claire, is sickened by this and can't tolerate it. But how it causes a fight, because people are like, "What's your problem, lady?" And Jamie, obviously, he's a progressive thinker. He is more along the lines of Claire opinions on these kind of things, and he helps out here by doing the only thing he can think to do in the moment, which is buy the slave to save his life.
Yeah, exactly. She sadly she got exactly what she didn't want here
Yeah.
in terms of she's now part of the problem.
Well, their plan is obviously to free him as soon as they can. But the interesting thing, and as we did our research, was you couldn't just free a slave. You couldn't just buy somebody and then say go, because the way the law was, if you turned someone loose, whoever found them or grabbed them up could claim them. So if you set them free in town, someone else would have just owned him, and that. So the only way to set them free was bring them somewhere where slavery wasn't, part of the culture, but also that there was a like a colony of escaped slaves that lived up in the mountains, and it was kind of like an underground railroad at that time. It wasn't as formalized as the one during the Civil War, but it was the same concept, that they where there were slaves that escaped and would go off, and there were paths cut for them and trees that were marked, which we'll see coming up later, and they all helped each other to get free and go up and live in the mountains freely. And that's what they're, eventually going to want to do with Temporary.
We we also bumped on it. I think I've always pronounced it temeraire, but I don't know if it's temporary. We all have
Temporary,
different.
I know.
We all need pronunciation guides in this.
I think you're
this
right. I
Outlander.
think it's Temeraire.
So many difficult names.
Oh, well, sometimes in the book we've been pronouncing things wrong for like years and months and years. Galis, I think we said Gillis. We thought it was Gillis Duncan, and then we found out it was Galis Duncan.
But also in
And
the
of course,
book, I mean,
Marceline.
there's so many variations of her name in the book. It's Galis, Gilly, Jillian.
Jillian.
So she
Yeah.
herself has a woman of many names.
The actor here did an amazing job. I'm sure this was not an easy role, but he just has such emotion and expression in his eyes that you can just watch him. He just says so much, while saying so little.
Mm-hmm. I love the Campbells.
This is part of the scene that was supposed to come before the bloodbath. If you read the scripts on the Outlander community, if you go inside the script and see the script, you'll see that this scene actually came before we meet Galis. And the first half of the scene was cut, where she's upset about having lost the stones with her sailors. And now the second half of the scene was with the Campbells, who we meet here, and we just moved it to later.
Well, just because I think everyone thought the bloodbath scene was such a
Yeah,
stronger opening.
It was a much better reveal for Galis. But here's where we first see where we first see them in Jamaica, because we met them back in 307 when Claire went to the apothecary. He mentions back then that they're about to set sail for the West Indies, and this is where they reappear.
But this was another area where we have altered slightly from the book a little bit on the treasure and who left it there and such, because once again trying to unwind that history and trying to figure out exactly how Galis knew about it, which in the book I believe Galis does find out from Dougal, but why he didn't go back to get it and why she's waited until now to get it.
Right. So many questions came up about if they had this treasure, why didn't it get used in the...
And why has Galis waited all this time after killing so many husbands to go back and get it if she knew it was there?
Right. Well, presumably she didn't need it. She married a very wealthy man, several of them.
That's what we thought anyway.
Yeah. And here they're arriving at the governor's ball. That's the first time we've seen Jamie in a wig, right? I don't think he...
Yes, and he looks fabulous. I don't know if
looks great.
Sam loves it or not, but I think he looks so great. We filmed this on location, the exterior of the governor's palace in Stellenbosch in South Africa. And then the interiors of the governor's ball, actually, we shot in Scotland before we left Scotland to go to South Africa. And as we talked about before, that was a little difficult because we filmed the entire governor's ball scenes.
That's right.
Before we left, so before we filmed 9 and 10 and 11, and that's something we do not like to do very often. It's very tough.
It's a real credit to the actors, and I say this almost in every podcast because so many things are filmed out of order. It's just so hard for them, I'm sure, to keep all the emotions straight in their head of what am I supposed to know and where am I supposed to be at emotionally, because was shot so far ahead of time that it was just like, oh, by the way, you're going to a ball, and trying to fill them in on what comes before and what comes later when they haven't maybe not even read this particular script. It takes a lot of concentration and a great degree of acting skill to pull this off.
But also, I think for the crew, this is really tough because, you really have to guess ahead. For instance, as we talked about in the podcast for last week's episode, Claire is on an island and gets sunburned, and because we shot the interior of the governor's ball before, Anita, who is Claire's hair and makeup person, really just had to go for it and kind of decide what level she would be at, which was really tough. And for everyone else, it's you're just jumping ahead, and it's hard for us too because there's sometimes things we go along and we like to change and tweak, and you're really kind of stuck with something now, and but it turned out great. I mean,
Oh yeah, everyone looks great. Our makeup team does such a great job.
well, this was also a huge production to pull off. There's a lot of extras for us,
Amount of-
and there's a lot of working parts in this governor's ball. That have to be figured out, and with so many extras, it's always a little more
Yeah,
complicated to shoot.
it's a very tricky thing to shoot, and actually, I promised I would bring up and explain what Lukey's were, because I believe I mentioned Lukey's in an earlier episode that Luke Skelhouse had written, and we tease him
I'm
about
sorry,
it.
Luke. I don't
Sorry,
condone
Luke.
this.
It's not really Luke's fault, let me point out, but it's kind of interesting. I mean, when you're writing, usually you have, separate scenes, and the scenes tend to be, anywhere from half a page to maybe 3 or 4 pages, and occasionally you get a long one that's maybe 6 or 7 pages. That's a really long scene in television. But when you do something like the Governor's Ball, it's actually kind of like one big long scene, and it can be a little deceptive when you're reading the script because you're not, it looks like one scene, but there might be 8 parts to it, 8 different setups, because okay, now they're in line here, and then they go over there and talk to so and so, and now we're with Margaret Campbell, but it's all part of one big long thing, and you don't realize it until you get into the shooting of it that it's can be difficult.
Yeah, directors hate that.
Directors kind of hate it, and so Luke kind of we were like, hey, there's a lot of Lukey's here where it's a lot of little scenes strung together under the guise of one scene, but it's really like 8 scenes in one. So we tease him about that, but
I think this is
we
actually
love you, Luke.
sadly where the origin of the term came up in filming this Governor's Ball sequence. So,
Yeah.
but it was kind of a bittersweet time because we were obviously very all excited to have the actors anyway, and part of our crew a small break before going to South Africa,
Yeah.
but it was also us leaving a good part of our Scottish crew behind.
Yeah.
So it was kind of those mixed bittersweet moments where people are happy to get a break on our crew, but
Yeah.
you're saying goodbye to them.
Here, we used to have some dialogue here, and I remember we cut it out because the stage direction was just, I think or maybe the dialogue was, I'm doing with my eyes what my body wants to do
Yeah.
or something, and then we thought, let's just cut the dialogue and just give her a look like that, and of course that's what Sam is very adept at doing, and
John Gray. Well, we also, I don't know if you guys talked about in an earlier episode the fact that we don't see John Gray on the voyage over.
right.
And the decisions behind that, and how we just felt like, I think Ron felt a little bit like it was potentially convenient that Claire runs into him on the ship, and then we're also going to see him here.
Right.
And also we made the decision partly because we did the Woodley reveal earlier, but as well due to also not being able to bring that young actor over to Cape Town. As well, not to have Willie appear in Jamaica as he
Right.
does in the books.
So this is the first time that Claire has met John Gray. She's certainly heard about him. But also just to do, Voyager, I've said this over and over, it's such a great book, but it's such a dense book. There's so much happening that it just wasn't possible to do justice to some of the other episodes if they were overloaded with stuff. And I think that John Gray and that storyline would have maybe overshadowed or taken away from the story that we really needed to tell and do justice to at that time. And it was better here. We thought it would make a really good reveal here where Claire meets him. And so that's just a change. We have to do that sometimes. But we work it out in order to get everything in, to get all of the parts we love in. We make these changes. And here we go. Here we see Galus seeing
Also
Claire
in
for
a,
the
and
first
also
time.
in a hard front wig. That's what these are called.
right.
These the one that Lord John and Jamie and Galus are wearing are hard front wigs. And actually, I thought Annie, who's Annie McEwen, who's the head of our hair and makeup department, came up with this idea of Galus being in a hard front red wig, which I wasn't sure about at first, but when I saw it, I thought, oh, what an interesting
Yeah.
way to do that.
Yeah.
I thought it was great, and to me, we haven't seen as many women in those. So
Yeah, true. I remember when you sent the pictures over by email and you were like, what do you think of this? And
I thought it
opening
was
it
great.
and kind of going, wait a minute, who is that? Like, it was so different, such a different look. And then I got so excited realizing it was Galus and going, wow, this is a cool look for her. It's her formal look.
Galus pushes the envelope.
She does. And I love what John Gray is wearing here. Terry, of course, the clothes in the governor's ball are all amazing. His suit is particularly nice. Maybe we can get that one.
For you?
Well, no, just to have around. I don't know. There's it's.
Well, I guess I know what you'd take from the set if.
Oh, there's many things I'd like to steal, but I still want that
Sony?
watch. I still want the watch from the
right.
watch.
Yep.
Sony snake, maybe, yeah, maybe. The original Sony
Yes,
or
the original Sony.
the Willie Sony?
Oh, I don't know. That's a good question.
Well, I should get one of those Sonys, I think. I don't know if you can tell, but what Claire's wearing that necklace, and it's a dolphin or a.
Is it?
Yeah, I think it's a fish, which later Galus is going to use to see the sapphire that John Gray is wearing. That's the sapphire that Galus is after.
Right.
And Claire's like, say what? My husband gave you a jewel.
I know. Small fun fact. Our last scene that we filmed in Scotland before we moved to South Africa was in this room, and it was actually the scene between later on in this episode, which we'll get to, just for a fun fact. Always kind of like pointing out like the last scenes of a season.
Right, right. And we did a little something different with Willoughby as well in this episode, and different from the book. We love the character of Willoughby so much, and the character of Margaret, and we just saw them both as these sort of, very sweet souls who were lonely and disenfranchised, and we decided to
Yeah, that maybe there was
that
some
maybe
sort
there
of
was an
connection.
attraction there. Maybe there was an attraction. And so we see just Willoughby taking a little
Well, there
interest,
are two. I
an
mean, in
interest
some
in
ways,
her.
they're both strangers in a strange land. You know what I mean? She is being used for her abilities
Her
and
gifts,
being told
yeah.
she's crazy, and
And he kind of
he
understands
sees
her.
a kindred soul.
Yeah, a kindred soul.
spirit.
Exactly.
But we also obviously, wanted to create something deeper for Willoughby, considering that some of that Fiend storyline, obviously, we didn't do it all, and he is part of that Fiend storyline in the books, and just felt like this was a nice character moment for the two of them.
Mm-hmm. Well, he gave such a beautiful speech in 309, yeah, about women and how he felt about them, but he'd never
But they're
found.
coarse like bears.
Yeah, yeah, and
But she's not.
no, she doesn't look upon him the way that he's been the object of a lot of prejudice, and she
Well,
doesn't see that.
yeah,
She
but-
looks past that.
But
and-
also, he's probably the first person that has reached out to her, not wanting something, not wanting
Yeah.
to hear a fortune, and not needing something from her except herself. I tried to find a brandy for this episode, but it didn't work.
no, we didn't have any in the. We'll save it for
Another episode next year?
season 4.
Yep.
Start making our list now. You know how it's like,
Yeah, exactly.
like it's Christmas, but you're already deciding what you want for next Christmas. Pick our liquors for season 4.
We also talked so much about, in the writer's room, about the dynamic between Claire and Lord John, because, there's questions about whether or not we believe that Claire is jealous of Lord John, and you know, in the book, obviously, she walks in and feels like there's something going on between Lord John and Jamie and is a little jealous. You know, I think we want to move away from that slightly. I think we did want to play on the idea that there is respect between these two, but still they don't love each other. There's, you know, she's very wary of him, of what he wants. He is very jealous of Claire. You know, she has the man he wants. But it's a very interesting relationship.
Yeah, very interesting.
I thought they played this so well because there's such and it was written so well as well by Luke that there's a lot of subtext to the scene.
A lot. I love that when, you know, he says you were his every heartbeat. Mm. And so clearly he is saying, I wish I was.
Yeah.
But yet he's not, there's no cruelty, there's no, you know, there's not a bitterness there. It's more like a wistfulness, and a longing, but he's not holding it against her. I think that's, you know, crucial. Yeah. That they're not enemies. It's just, wow, I finally see the woman that, you know, no wonder Jamie pined over you and was so devastated by the loss of you, because you're pretty awesome, I have to admit. I feel that's what.
Yeah,
Lord
but I
Grey
still
is.
think that he. I don't think Lord John loves Claire. I think he respects
No, I don't
her.
mean he loves her, but I mean he thinks she's, in the short meeting they have, it's like she's stunningly beautiful.
Yes.
And she is obviously a strong woman. She's not some fading flower, and I think he's
flower.
like a fade. Yeah. She's the type of woman that deserves Jamie.
Yes,
I think he has to concede that.
Oh, absolutely.
You know,
yes,
that's
absolutely right. This scene, of course, also shot in South Africa, so you can see the difficulty of, when we were filming the inside scenes in Scotland, we didn't film any of these connecting scenes. Anything that was outside, this scene, the Willoughby Margaret scene, the arrival scene, anything like that was filmed several months later.
Right. Here's where we get a little bit of backstory to the witch trial, which made me very happy.
Excellent episode written by Miss Tony.
Thank you. But I think, you know, after that episode, you know, people wondered what happened to Galis. What, you know, we never knew what happened to her. And here she explains that the baby actually saved her life, because they can't put a woman to death if she's with child. They have to wait. And in that waiting time in the hole, you know, Dougal was able to come and rescue the both of them.
And substitute Granny McNabb, or
Poor Granny.
Or I think we ended up. It wasn't Granny McNabb.
It was,
sorry.
well, in the book it's Granny Mackenzie, and I think we changed her name because we didn't want to imply
that he killed his own.
It was
grandmother.
Dougal's own grandmother, although he probably would have, that Dougal, that rascal. But yeah, I think we changed her name, so it was just a natural passing. No grannies were harmed in the making of this episode. But I've been waiting for, you know, of course, for Galis.
You're a Galis lover.
I love her.
You're totally
know,
Team Galis.
I am Team Galis, and people always would say to me, "Oh, I loved your episode, but it's so sad she's dead." And I had to just like bite my, you know, lip to be like, well, yep, sad, very sad. We won't see her again, because of course I knew, and the book readers know we'll see her again. But I wanted to just scream, "She's coming back! She's not gone!" You know. They have such an interesting friendship, because all of their scenes, it's always a dance between them. They both respect each other. They like each other. They never let their guard down around each other, though. I think both of them feel there's a certain cat and mouse quality to all of their interaction, which I find really fascinating.
Mm-hmm. And another fun fact, we did consider back in season 2 having a little bit of a Galis Dougal runner in Paris, because we had talked to Diana about the fact that Galis was in Paris during that time and potentially having an affair, I think, with the Comte Saint Germain, actually, but
That's
also
right.
Dougal. And we did think that would be really fun. We ended up not being able to do it just because there wasn't room and it wasn't possible. But I still love that idea that Galis
Was there at the same time.
exactly, and that Dougal probably brought her there, and they probably.
They might have run into each
exactly.
other in an apothecary or something.
Oh, I'm sure they were doing more than running into each other. I think she was
No,
probably.
I mean Claire and
Oh,
Claire and
I
Gales.
thought you meant
Not
Dougal.
Dougal and Gales. We
I
know
was
what
like, I
they
think
were
they're
doing.
doing more than that. Now, you as
Now,
a Galis lover, Tony, do you think Galis truly cares about Claire, or is using Claire for her motives?
I do. I think she didn't at first, but I think when Claire stood up for her in the witch trial and refused to renounce her, I think that was a shock to Galis, because I think she's never really trusted anyone, and this display of loyalty and friendship kind of rocked her world and was like, wow, okay, this is maybe someone who's for real. And I think she'll still, she still has her machinations, but I think that counted for something. And
but that's some of the things we discuss in the writers' room. Like,
Yeah.
you'll end up spending a couple hours talking about, there are people who think, oh, Galis is truly a friend to Claire, and that's why, she stuck up for her at the witch trial. And then there are people who think that she only has her own motivation to think of, and you debate these,
Yeah.
the motivations of everyone.
yeah, there is a split in the room, I would say. There's some Galis haters. Well, not haters, I wouldn't.
No, but
I won't
there is
rat
a-
anybody out. But there's people that think Galis is just a psychopath with no feelings, and I disagree.
She's not afraid to kill a person, let's put it that way.
She has killed a few people. But she has passion for her cause. She's a zealot.
So that makes
and
it okay,
It's
people.
not okay. Let me be clear. It's not okay to kill people, even for your cause. But I think she.
I think and we've said this in the room many times, I think she does have an affection for Claire, and she does truly feel like a bond of two people who've gone,
Yeah.
potentially through the same thing, but Claire just can't stand in her way.
That's right. She won't let anyone. It doesn't even matter how she feels about you. If you're in her way, then you're in her way, and she'll, no telling what she'll do. But we always talk in the writers' room about how we all have friends like Gala.
Do you have a
We're
friend
all
like
like, well,
Gala?
we have those friends that we know they do bad things maybe, and we just kind of turn.
What kind of
turn
friends are you
a
hanging out
blind
with?
eye. Well, I have some, not bad people, but maybe people that you don't want to know what they do when they're not. But they're a lot of fun when you're with them, and then you kind of go, they have that other side to them. I just never want to cross them. But there's never a dull moment.
I actually wish we'd been able to have a few more scenes with Galis and Lord John. I think they would have been kind of a fun little
Yeah.
a duo. He's not sure what to make of her, and
Well, it's not too late.
I love Mark and Allison here. They're so good. Two other characters that I think really, really came in and owned these parts. And, when we do casting, it's people always kind of ask how we do casting. And normally, we put in a description of what we think the character should be, kind of, physical characteristics, but also just general attributes. And then Suzanne Smith sends us all the actors and we pick. Sometimes we do suggest a particular actor if we're looking for them. And then we decide between the producers who we like, and then we kind of fight it out and wrestle about it and with the director. But usually we do all kind of tend to agree, and certainly on those two and
Yeah.
and everyone else.
We spend so much time together, and you're with us a lot, Meryl, much more, than often than creative producers on shows. You spend a lot of time with the writers, and so I think we're very much in sync. We talk about these characters so much that I think we have a similar idea of what they should be, so we often agree.
And this is the curse, which I think Luke came up with.
Yeah.
He's now our prophecy
He
dude
has a gift.
for prophecies.
We kind of said we wanted him. Our model was Nostradamus, and we kind of said, hey, we want him to be these kind of maybe rhyming couplets that have these mysterious meanings. And I don't know if he consulted a Nostradamus book, but somehow we'd say, well, we need one here about that says this or that, and he'd go, okay, and he'd go in his office, and I swear, like 5 or 10 minutes later, he'd come back out and he'd go, how about, and he'd say it, and we'd be like, how'd you think of that fast? And so he has a gift for that. And yeah, he did come up with this prophecy.
Man's attack and woman's curse. That's poetic.
Yeah. I mean, this is what Galus has wanted all along, a new king, the rightful king.
I love Gillis. Now, when that first showed up in the script, I was like, "What? If Benjamin Button? That
Yeah.
couldn't be. Would that be accurate to?"
Well, a lot of things come up and we go, wait a minute, that's modern. But then we realize, oh, it's either Galus or Claire who are
Exactly,
from the
yeah.
60s. And so they would have, they would know that term. I know we looked that up and it was older than we thought.
Oh, the young newlyweds.
Oh, they're so cute together.
That's the tricky part sometimes about doing an ensemble. Obviously, this is Claire and Jamie's story primarily, but we've got Fergus Marsley, Willoughby. There's all these other characters, Lord John, that you want to service in a script, and that's a difficult sometimes. Some scripts lean more heavily towards certain people than others, but you still want to see all our group together and involve them in many ways, and it's tricky sometimes to figure out how to keep to main storyline with Jamie and Claire, but also include everyone and make it feel organic to the story.
Right. Here comes Captain Leonard. This is the first time they've gotten, some hope about young Ian and where to find him. And of course, are shocked, or maybe not so shocked, to learn that Galus has something to do with it. And now Temeraire is telling him about this sort of underground railroad and the escaped slaves that live in the mountains, and they're going to make good on their promise because Jamie had promised him, help me to look for my nephew, and I will get you to freedom, and it was important to us to show that Jamie kept his word.
Yeah, and Claire.
Because Temeraire had helped them.
This mark was also something that we went round and round about because, that's something that you do sometimes add in production while you're there, practically, but a lot of times things like this don't show up on camera, so in post you have to go back and decide how big is the slash, and you add it in digitally, and
Right.
What color should it be?
Was it
and,
a slash?
Yeah,
a
exactly.
machete
Is it
slash?
a-
Was
a
it a paint? We had a lot of variations of what this mark on the tree looked like. Such a small detail, but it's important.
Yeah, we also imagined Jamie in the carriage wanted to take off that wig finally, and has discarded it because he's not a heart front wig guy.
And of course, he gives Claire the pictures of Brianna and Willie before he's taken away, because they're precious to him, and he's being arrested.
Also, if he's caught with those pictures, I mean,
Yeah, people will be like, "What the heck are these?" Because obviously they're from the future. I love that Claire tells him off because she saved his whole ship full of guys, and this is how he repays her. But we end on find young Ian, which is what the whole season has been leading to, the whole second half of the season, and
another great episode.
another
Congratulations to all.
great one, the penultimate.
Thank you for inviting me in.
Oh, anytime. Although this is your last one
It is my last
for
one.
this season,
Last one
and
for this season. Hopefully, I'll see you guys next season.
oh, you definitely will, and I hope everyone will join us next week for the season finale. And it'll be myself and Matthew Roberts for the season finale, Eye of the Storm.